All right, welcome to the Drifters Club. Now, I say that with, I'm laughing when I'm saying that because I just didn't know how to start this video and that sounded like the right thing to do. But I want to talk about drifting just because drifting is something that has impacted my life many, many times over again. And it's something that I've always wanted to sort of come up with a way to reduce drifting. I say this because I have myself been a drifter practically all of my life. I've occasionally come out of drifting, and that's usually when I find a project that I'm interested into. That's what gets me out of drift until I reach success into that project, then I go back into drift. So I'm hoping that this video helps people understand drifting a little bit better. One of the things that I want to bring forward is that there is two types of drifter. There is the functional and dysfunctional drifter. So meaning that I'm going to be focusing on the functional drifter because I think that's the one that is mainly being left out maybe, or just more popular. Drifting is on the rise. It has been for a while. The way life is going forward is not helping into getting rid of this problem. It's some of these gurus I'm talking to and listening to have also mentioned that drifting is a modern day problem, and I totally agree with it. You know, if you look into modern day, there's a lot of all the structure, and also modern day of having more options and opportunities is also a space that is created for drifting. Because drifting, how do you get out of drifting is by setting boundaries, goals, and restrictions. Boundaries and restrictions, kind of the same thing. And having a process into something. Because another thing that I was told about drifting that I thought was really, really interesting is that drifting isn't a motivational problem, it's a thinking problem. And I 100% agree with that, right? Because if I take myself, for example, is that it's not that I am not motivated, is I don't know where to put my energy towards. Not knowing what I want to do next. Exploring. I put my energy into exploring, but you know, it's still finding, okay, what is it that I want to explore? So there's that gap of thinking somewhere along the way that is broken, which is probably from the lack of focus. That's another thing that happens, right? And another point that I want to say about drifting is that aimlessness is not taken seriously enough. It's not something you can really find an essay about or anything like that. There's some gurus out there that are talking about it, but it's often really related more towards depression and things like that. And that's how psychology sees it, as a secondary to another problem, another dysfunction. See, I happen to think differently. For me, in my life, it would be more of an example of like drifting comes first, and then anxiety, maybe depression, or things like that, depending on how long you stay in it, right? So I see more of aimlessness as a front leader to other dysfunctions. And that is why I want to put more attention to it, because I believe that it should have at least its place in the healing world, and instead of falling under other categories, because of the fact that I do think that it is a stepping stone towards something more serious. And with my experience in drifting is that it's always the case. It has to get serious before something happens. Otherwise, it's like, should I do this? Should I do that? Which way should I take? I have this option. I don't have this option. Okay, I'll take a course on this. I'll take a course on that. But everything sort of, then nothing sticks, right? But then once I reach a point where it's like, okay, it's a do or die here. I have no more time left to hum and ah. And then I start punching, and then things start happening. And then the cycle starts over again. I get into something new. And then what I've realized in the last year, since I've been off for a year now, is that when I start punching, though, I end up reaching the success that I want. But often it's a decision that I've made out of survival, right? I'm going to take this job because it pays this much. I'm going to aim for this thing because it pays this much. It becomes more of a money thing, right? So, but that's a temporary Band-Aid for it, because at this point, okay, now I've got something to aim for, so I get gratification for every levels that I beat, let's say, right? Because now I'm getting into a new job probably. It's still not a passion job, but it's a new job, and I have to learn new things, and then it's challenging and everything. So now this is fun. Once I reach the success, I've reached what I wanted. It takes only a couple years, and then I am so bored with it, and then that's what triggers me into going back into drifting, aimlessness. And now I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So if I take myself for an example, my last job, which I held for a long time, but I had to change into different divisions because I was getting bored with one, and then I had to do it. So I changed different divisions. But I actually went into it and it was like, okay, I'm going to do this, and I'm aiming for this kind of success. But I said, in the meantime, I have to think what my next thing's going to be, so that when I reach this point of getting back into drifting, I'm not spending all this time going humming and awing about what it is I want to do and connecting, because I've been through this before. I know this is how it's going to happen. But what happened is that I didn't actually do that. I got getting caught up with everybody else into this new job that I was into, and then growing it, and then I just sort of got to the point where it was time for me to change, which is a rotation of 5 to 7 years for me. And then there was, I had no answer. Excuse me. Now it's been a year and 2 months. It's been a year and 2 months now since I've left my work. In the meantime, I have picked up a little bit of a job that I work 3 times a week, grooming the trails for the snowmobilers. I just started this job in 2026. So 2025, I worked only 1 day. And so I'm kind of rambling a little bit here, but drifting is just a really dangerous place to be if you're in it too long, because it is going to erode at your confidence. It's going to erode at your imagination, your will, your identity, at almost everything. Eventually, by staying in drift too long, you go into deep autopilot, and then after that, that's when you start to go into things that are more like anxiety. Now you have anxiety about, going to work all the time, because to go into a work that you don't want, that you don't feel connected to. You get anxiety by not knowing what to do next, or you just and then you eventually go into depression if you stay in it too long, right? So that's something we want to avoid. That's something I want to aim at. But mostly, I want to make it fun. There is a positive side to drifting, and that's the side that once that I kind of want to bring forward. I don't want to avoid talking about the difficulties of it. That's why my first videos are going to be more about the difficulties of it and just getting that out of the way. And then sort of looking at the positive side and trying to maximize on that positive side and master the positive side. Because I think that drifting, aimlessness has its place into any kind of transformation that a person wants to make, whether it's like a small transformation or an entirely new life that they want to build, because we're allowed to do that. We're allowed to build something totally new that is seen as out of character to others, because identity is not something you're born with. So it's something that you learn. It's built over repetition, setting boundaries and goals, and that's where identity comes from. So you can change your identity as you move along, and it would be normal and to do it and healthy, because you're not the same person that you were 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago. Some would even go and say you're not even the same person you were yesterday, right? And that's going pretty intense, but it's true. Your cells, everything has changed inside. What am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that your identity can be readjusted because you have changed probably your mind on certain views. I'm sure you hold some views that you used to hold views a long time ago that you look back on it now and be like, oh, I can't believe I thought that way. I can't believe that this was true or anything like that. There's also your philosophy has probably changed. So it only makes it only makes sense that your identity changes and matches your new philosophy. But the problem here is that that I want to address is that space where you're like, Scheißen, I've really been up to here with work, with this type of job, with this type of identity, that now I feel that there's a change that needs to happen, but I don't know what that is. And that's what I want to tackle more in my next videos and see what we could come up with. We could come up with ways that can help us through that. I'm going to be testing some. I'm going to be making up some of my own, and I want to share the process with you guys. So my next video is going to be on the dangers of aimlessness, drifting. And so I'll go a little bit deeper into why being in drift too long is dangerous, what can happen, and give a solution to try to stay out of drift for so long. So that's it for this video. I know that it's just a little bit more of an introductory video, but if this is a subject that interests you and you think you agree with me that it should be talked about more, then like and subscribe and pass this video to someone else that you think might be interested into these topics, because we're going to have a lot more topics on drifting and aimlessness, and it may help someone, even if it just helps someone diagnose the difference between depression and drifting, so that a person can get the proper care into picking or getting back into a direction for them, or even just picking a direction for them, right? Because that's where I am right now, is I'm in a drift zone where I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. I have options, but none of them are really meeting this thing that is calling me. I'm not even sure what it is. I just know that there's a different way of life that I want to live. I have a bit of hints of what that might be, but I don't know how to I don't know what's going to bring me there. I want to find my next adventure, my next career. And that's it. So if that's something that's interesting to you, like and subscribe. See you in the next video.